Thank you, Doctor. And thank you, Mr. Malloy, and thank you, everybody, for inviting me. And I'm glad to be here. And thank you, Doctor, for those wonderful remarks. Dear friends, it is my honor to speak to you today at the Indo-Chinese Refugees Movement and the Private Sponsorship Program Conference at one of the world's leading centers on refugees and forced migration studies here at York University in Toronto. I am thrilled to be here among you for walks of life who have contributed in their own capacity and share in the boat people refugees experience across the sea and across the country. C'est un grand honneur pour moi de participer à cette conférence pour non seulement discuter de mon expérience sur la réponse canadienne aux réfugiés indo-chinois après la guerre du Vietnam, mais surtout pour remercier tous ceux qui ont grandement contribué à cette tragédie humaine. It is also a great honor to be among academics in the field, leading refugees advocates, sponsorship agreement, current all public servants of all levels of government, past refugees, and of course Canadian sponsor for all walks of life, and without hesitation took part in the vast international effort dedicated to finding a safe haven for Indo-Chinese refugees. Before I do my best to address the topics of the Indo-Chinese refugees movement and the launch of the private refugee sponsorship program, let me tell you that as the first Vietnamese Canadian senator, I cannot but help to feel that we have come a long way since 1975. It is my true honor also to share a few words about my own experience and some of the lessons I have learned along the way. I also wish to say that although my experience are shared by many, and that every refugee has its own unique story, which is one of the reasons why this conference is so important. As you have heard throughout the different panelists and lecturers this great conference has brought together, Vietnamese boat people began arriving in Canada in the mid-70s, following the end of the Vietnam War. In the year following the war, over 1 million refugees fled the war, ravaged the countries of Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. After the war, 65,000 South Vietnamese were executed, and 1 million were sent to prison and so-called re-education camp, where an estimated 165,000 died because of retribution from the communist North Vietnam. We had to flee. We have to abandon our houses. We have to leave our friends, families, and our country of origin after the fall of Saigon. An estimate of 1.5 million fled Vietnam as refugees and boat people. We have to navigate not only through deadly storms, but also through diseases and starvation. The primary cause to death of the boat people was drowning, though many were attacked by pirates and murdered or sold into slavery or prostitution. According to United Nations High Commission for Refugees, 250,000 perished in the seas looking for a brighter future. They were prepared to risk everything. Those who took the ocean in tiny overcrowded ships were duped, the boat people. The survivors who did not perish at sea sometimes languished for years in a refugee camp. Canada was one of the few countries accepting Vietnamese refugees. Between 75 and 76, Canada admitted around 5,000 or 6,000 Vietnamese immigrants. Due to the public outcry in 1979, the Canadian government decided that the number of boat people brought to Canada should be dependent on public support. So in July 1975, it introduced a matching formula. The government would sponsor one refugee for each sponsor privately. Churches, corporations, or groups of 5 or more adult Canadian citizens were eligible to sponsor refugees directly. By 1985, 110,000 Vietnamese refugees had settled in Canada. They called boat people, were internally diverse. They include a variety of social classes of both urban and rural dwellers. The majority did not speak English or French and had no relatives in Canada. They also arrived during a period of economic downturn in Canada. This factor led to a struggle to integrate into Canadian society and achieve economic independence. Canada was among the countries that welcomed us with open arms. Under the leadership of Prime Minister Joe Clark, Canada collectively accepted boat people the load of 137,000 Vietnamese refugees. Canadians of all walks of life helped in many ways to welcome the boat people. They went above and beyond to ensure that the practical and psychological needs of the refugees were met upon their arrival. Since then, Vietnamese Canadians have more than doubled in the number and have become an important part of the Canadian fabric, with now more than 300,000 across the country. But some countries turn the boat people away, even if they did manage to land. So the refugees had to travel further to settle in the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Australia, Africa, Israel. The Vietnamese diaspora across the globe now amount to approximately 3.5 million. This is how our story started here, with a search for better opportunities, a safer society, and a bright future for our children. Voilà comment notre histoire a commencé ici, avec une recherche pour un avenir meilleur dans notre société, plus sécure, et un futur plus certain pour nos enfants. L'expérience canadienne des réfugiés indochinois a su maintenir une tradition humanitaire et assurer la succession d'un système de parrainage de réfugiés exemplaires sur l'échelle internationale. It is near impossible to imagine that anyone that can live through a war, endure refugee camps, and survive months at sea would not have any trouble adapting in the new environment. It's also seemed impossible to give up your house, your jobs, your friends, and take on a lifetime to move on in the country with a language, custom, climate that are completely different. We have seen and heard the sad story many times before. Refugees fleeing persecution, seeking resettlement by a boat. Vietnamese community did so successful because it relied on its family unit, its hard work ethics, and of course, the support of sponsors to survive and to integrate into Western culture. But some had more difficulty adjusting to Canada than other refugees. The psychological trauma they have endured is a major factor. They suffer the loss of families, possession, position, self-esteem, and respect. Some have been raped. Others have seen family members killed. They carry guilt for being the survivor, the ones who got out. Life in Canada is the big adjustment in many ways. New home, new language, new climate, new food, new culture, new custom, and everything. It's different kind of jobs that require new skills and or don't recognize your previous credential. Those over 50 years old find themselves a burden, unable to find work. The young, so infinitely adaptable, have an easier time. In response to this struggle, Canada created a private sponsorship program. So many Canadians proudly opened their homes and hearts to thousands and thousands of Vietnamese refugees who needed a place to rebuild their lives. They helped refugees settled in Canada by providing for families in food, shelter, finance, and clothing. Churches rallied their congregational and families untied in order to help our new refugees become self-sufficient. Government employees worked tirelessly with an unfailing dedication. We cannot express our appreciation enough to everyone who took a leading role in resettling refugees and coordinate on sponsorship effort. Most particularly, the most outstanding contribution success come from the large number of refugees partnered by Canadian people and groups who donate time, money, energy, and funds to ensure that refugees receive the personal help they need to get settled in their new communities. Canada's abilities to respond was enhanced by the vision and dedication of municipal and cultural leaders who act as an important catalyst in focusing the concern of Canadians and their community, such as the past mayor of Ottawa, Marion Dewar. An important acknowledgement should go on to the leadership role provided by the Churches of Canada in mobilizing their congregation in the support of the refugees. This conference aimed to acknowledge the 60,000 Vietnamese who were welcomed in 1979 and 80s, are an important chapter in Canada's ongoing humanitarian tradition of accepted, persecuted, and displaced refugees for permanent residence. This part of history took place during the Cold War era, at a time when the world was divided into opposition, ideological camps, and marked by the different type of devastating conflicts. Today, we now face different immigration problems, different security threats, which are mostly defined by a post-9/11 era, and new technology of information. These new times bring new challenges and conflict. At the same time, these new times bring up new opportunity and new options to deal with refugees issue, especially those who emerge from devastating conflicts like the crisis in Syria. Such real human tragedy is somewhat can be put into words, which is why the Canadian government deeply concerned about the Syrian crisis. Nearly 2 million Syrians has been displaced by the civil war now, raging their homeland. And Canada continues to work with the international community towards this in all fronts. Canada's humanitarian commitment for refugee protection persists as it continues to have one of the most generous immigration and refugee systems in the world. As the former Minister of Immigration, Citizenship, and Multiculturalism, the Honourable Jason Kenney, he said that we welcome about 1 out of every 10 in all resettled refugees globally, more than almost any other industrialized country. We have also increased resettlement assistance funding for refugees by 20%. Past and current refugees' experience clearly demonstrates that Canada continues to be a strong leader in providing humanitarian assistance to those in need throughout the Syrian crisis. It is important to continue to work with the international community to pursue all diplomatic means to resolve the Syrian crisis. Only a political solution can end the violence and the humanitarian crisis like the one in Syria, as well as other regions in the world. Throughout the Syrian crisis, individuals, groups, and organizations have provided outstanding service to the cause of refugees, displaced and stateless people from Syria. Canada has engaged to settle 1,300 Syrians by the end of 2014, with 200 among them who will be resettled through government-assisted refugee program, and 1,100 who will be settled through private sponsorship and refugees program. So the plight of refugees around the world continue to be a deep concern to Canada, and our commitment to the refugee protection remains strong. From economic to social security questions, the challenges facing Syria are monumental in scope as we address the most critical need of those affected by the Syrian crisis. Canada's contribution has provided shelter and other assistance to 4 million people inside Syria and to 1.6 million Syrians take refugees in neighboring countries. Le Canada continue de collaborer avec la communauté internationale afin de prendre toutes les mesures diplomatiques nécessaires pour résoudre la crise syrienne. La situation des réfugiés dans le monde préoccupe vivement notre pays. In summary, Canada created a very special class of refugee through Indo-Chinese designated class regulations, which designate individuals fleeing Vietnam as refugees under Canadian law. Refugees designated under this order were sponsored by community and religious groups with the assistance from the federal government. Refugees under this class had to prove that they could become financially established in Canada and that they had been outside of Vietnam since the fall of Saigon and the reunification of the country in 1975. That's what we did since 1975, 80s, and 90s. At 90, 99, 97, all the countries in the world, they do not recognize any more refugees. And they do not accept any more refugees. So these Vietnamese who stuck in the Philippines, we have 275 Vietnamese remaining in Philippines for nearly 20 years. And finally, last year, we brought them in Canada, all of them, except one. She passed away. She was murdered in the camp. So we sent the Vietnamese community in Vancouver, in Toronto. They went to the Philippines and bring her body back to Vietnam. In July, the Canadian government commit on admitting 50,000 refugees by the end of 1980s. The program, as you know already, I'm not going to say it because you have been for this conference for so long. So basically, all the facts and all the numbers are there. And last year, the government of Canada also accepted the remaining 64 Vietnamese refugees in Bangkok, Thailand, and 58 in Cambodia. Now I don't know, it's up to the Vietnamese community to do those paperwork and the sponsorship program privately and then try to bring them here. So basically, as we did the humanitarian assistance is emphasized with our position to support these refugees in Bangkok right now, and then Thailand and in Cambodia. The Canadian government also, I think we have accepted another 2,000 from Myanmar. And the process of that one, I don't know where we are at this stage, but the Myanmar, the Chan delegation went to the House of Commons in the Senate to speak with us and try to fast track those 2,000 refugees from Myanmar. Well, I'm thankful that our government recognized the hardship faced by the Indo-Chinese boat people and the Vietnamese boat people in the past, and continue to intervene in the recent human tragedy. As refugees, these struggles affect our cultural identity. They acknowledge where we come from. War and conflicts drove Vietnamese to immigration, but it is the openness, the opportunities, and the democratic values that encourage our people to settle here in Canada. In my opinion, the best solution to any refugees problem is removing the root cause which generates the refugees' outflow by promoting the respect of human rights. The respect of human rights by contributing to settlement or resettlement. The Socialist Republic of Vietnam has made good progress in finance, in other things for the past 10 years, and has increasingly integrated into the world economy, but the country still has a lot of work to accomplish in the field of human development. The Vietnamese refugees had to leave Vietnam by boat because of the Vietnamese government would not let them live. As the Vietnamese member of the community, we have joined force and worked as one voice to build Canada's present and future, as well as to promote human rights in Vietnam. C'est donc à travers cette promotion des droits de la personne et de la communauté que le gouvernement a pu garantir la préservation d'un style de vie qui nous si précieux, ce qui permet aux communautés vietnamiennes et aux plusieurs autres diasporas à travers le pays de contribuer de façon dynamique au patrimoine multiculturel et à la société canadienne. En effet, c'est grâce à cette belle diversité nationale et à nos valeurs de tolérance, de respect, de différence que ressortent nos plus grandes forces en tant que Canadiens vietnamiens. In closing, I would like to say that the both people experience is now part of history. The sponsorship of the Vietnamese refugees included the efforts of so many Canadians that is now part of our national heritage, a part of Canadian history and humanitarian tradition that is important to remember. On behalf of the Honourable Chris Alexander, Minister of Citizenship and Immigration, he cannot be here with you today. I would like once more to thank everyone for the warm welcome, and I would like to give thanks to York University for hosting this important event. I would like also to acknowledge the important and hard work undertaken by the organizer for this event, especially Mr. Malloy, President of the Canadian Immigration Historical Society, and Dr. Jennifer Heineman, Director of the Center for Refugees and Study, and all of you here. Thank you for inviting me to speak on tonight, and thank you for having me. It will be my pleasure to take any question if you have anything. Thank you. Okay.
Question? Dr. Howard Aiden, founder of Operation Lifeline.
Great.
I don't mean to say this is embarrassing, but when you said the government responded to the cries of the Canadian people, one of the thrusts of this conference was to conclude that in fact the people responded to the initiative of the Clark government. The reverse was the case. Now you gave the example of Syria, and you gave the example of maybe 2,500 refugees. If you take the equivalents, there are many, many more, 8 times as many Syrian refugees. 2,500 looks like nothing. And the question we ask ourselves, that's come up numerous times in this conference, why isn't the government taking 10, 20 times as many Syrians as they are?
Wow, that's the question I can answer for Minister Alexander, I think. But to be, what I can do is I can relay your message to the minister. I'm working in this one with the minister regarding refugees as well. Last April, I went to Bangkok, Thailand. I went to see the Director General of the United Nations for Human Rights, for refugees. And I asked them, why did you take so long in order to interview the refugees there and accept them as refugees as is? And he blamed the Thai government. They said the Thai government delayed all those things. They do not accept this and that. I say, what? He say, well, we use the term because if the refugees before us for the interview, he or she must be represented by a legal counsel. Now, in order to find the legal counsel, Vietnamese counsel or whatever there is illegal in Bangkok. So the United Nations for Refugees, they use that excuse in order not to do their work. So 2 days later, I asked the ambassador of Canadian ambassador in Thailand, Bangkok, asked him to arrange a meeting with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Thailand. I went there and see myself, and he said, it's not us, it's them. So I went back and I told the Director General, I said, from now on, don't use the word legal counsel. The word legal counsel, you can use it, but the person represented doesn't have to be a lawyer. A social worker is fine. Anybody who understands or who do the interpretation so that you can do the interview, so that you can accept them as refugees, so that they can resettle in other countries. So basically that's what they did and they are doing right now. That's why we have 68. I don't know how many more, but 68 so far. And we accept them. But I will relay that message to Minister Alexander. I will tell him why, and maybe I have some reason. I will answer personally that question to you. I promise that.
Other questions? Okay. Well, if not, I would like to ask our conference coordinator, Stella Ha, to come up and thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Before I start, I just want to say that I'm sorry if I've mispronounced your name. I've gone through a lot of our conference guests today trying to, our Vietnamese conference guests trying to find the right way to say it, but I apologize if I mispronounce it. But I just wanted to say thank you, Honourable Senator Ngo Thai Thang Hai, for this wonderful speech. As a child of two former Chinese Vietnamese refugees myself, your continued and unending commitment to advocating for freedom, democracy, and human rights in Canada, and especially for the Indo-Chinese community, has truly touched me. And although I'm speaking on behalf of myself, I'm also representing everybody here today to say that we're very thankful that you're here with us today. There's no one better that would be better representing the voices of freedom and also the people of Indo-Chinese refugee movement than yourself. And for that reason, on behalf of everybody in attendance and also the planning committee, I would like to present you with this gift. Thank you. Apologies.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. As I say, my office is open. Anything you need regarding refugees, please write to me, raise any question. I will do my best to answer that. Like I say, last year in July, I went to Myanmar to go and see the Minister of Education, Minister of Health, the President of the Foreign Affairs. In the Parliament, I raised the issue of the ethnic groups in the north of Myanmar has been, how do you say, oppressed by the government, something like that. And I asked them if we can send something to the children, some medicine, some vaccination to the children in that area. And they say they prefer doing it themselves. And I say no. If you want to do it, we do it ourselves. We send somebody in there with the team of doctors and nurses, but we're not giving you free vaccination and then to just do it because we know it won't reach them at all. But anyway, I thank you very much. And
Please. Yeah.
okay, please.
Oh, yes. This is Mr. Bill Jansen, who was the leading activist of the Mennonites in promoting sponsorship.
In the introduction, I think I understood that you are involved in promoting a free Vietnam.
That's right.
How do you assess the prospects of that? Are there some steps moving in that direction?
Well, as you know, the communist country is always controlled by the Politburo, not by the individuals. They make some progress in economy, yes. They made some progress in other terms, but regarding the human rights and the religious freedom and so on, I don't think they have any improvement at all. We are working on it. Every time I went with the Canadian delegations, every time I have the opportunity to meet with the Vietnamese officials, I raise the issue. Last November, the Parliament Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Honourable Deepak O'Brien, he went to Vietnam and visit the prison camp to visit Father Lee, and asked the Vietnamese government to release him. During that occasion, our Governor General also raised the issue with the President of Vietnam as well. So every opportunity we have, we raise it. And since you are Mennonite, I have a good news for you. In last April, when I was in Bangkok, I had the conference, roundtable with others, nonprofit organizations. And in there, the group of Mennonites, they come and talk to me, and I work it. And I think all the Mennonites in Thailand right now, they have been accepted by the Australian and New Zealand countries.
Anything further? Well, I think another round of applause.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.